Fantasy football drafts have happened or have mostly happened in most leagues. If you're still waiting to draft in your league, there is still time to sign up for Vampire League this year. Email vampireleaguesff@gmail.com to get signed up today to play on Sleeper this year as we work to have a dedicated platform to host your own Vampire League. But join us on Sleeper this year. Get in on the action with a Vampire League. But the excitement is finally here. We are now on the verge of actual NFL games happening. Your fantasy draft potentially has come and gone. Some of you still may be drafting. Hopefully, if you've already drafted, you're not looking at your draft, your lineup with regret or fear. Now, realistically, you did not get some of the players you wanted to draft because your league mates wanted them more. That's okay. But despite that, you didn't get all the players you were wanting to draft. You were hopefully able to get most of the players you wanted, and you felt good about your draft. You know what risks are there with the players. You feel good about your team construction. You're excited as week 1 is upon us for the NFL season and week 1 of fantasy football season. We want to start out week 1 strong. We don't want to start out weak. Now, for PSA, stop. Stop looking at the waiver wire. Don't think about who I should potentially add already. Don't worry about that. You've already drafted the players you want. Don't think about who should I add on my bench already. If you set your draft up well, you already have players that you have locked in on your starting lineup that you feel really great about. Otherwise, you shouldn't have drafted those players. If you don't feel good about it, why'd you draft them? Plus, on your bench should be either solid backups or upside plays that you're waiting for that big breakout potential. This is why you don't need to search the waiver wire right before the season starts. We need to stop doing this. Don't be looking at it. Say no to that. Say no to fantasy football waiver wire searching at this point. But let's be clear, though. We need to be aware of who's out there, who has upside that could still help our teams, even if we have a guy that maybe got injured. Maybe we have a guy that I'm not really so sure about. News came out about him now. We need to add. But let's not make fantasy football hard. Don't look at who can I trade. Don't be sending trade offers. We don't want to trade anything. If you draft players to trade them, that's not a winning strategy. Don't try to just trade away what you drafted. That's not good, especially before week 1. Now, there are players, like I said, that we should be looking for that upside. Players that if everything goes right, it might be worthy to add him. We need to be aware of those people. We need to know the upside plays. We need to know if the guy I drafted is not looking like the upside play we thought after week 1, but somebody we have our eye on is. We need to be ready to go jump on him. We need to go get those people. That's what we need to be looking at. We have to be ready to move fast. If you move early, you have to be ready to be wrong if you move early. Or that I was wrong, I moved off the guy that I shouldn't have too early too. That's honestly part of the process. But that's why we look at several key factors when we're doing this and playing fantasy football. We don't just look at how many points did they score versus how many points did this person score. There are other things to look at, other statistics that we have to be aware of while we're looking at this. So as we go through this and have data points this season, this is what we're going to be looking at. What are those key indicators that we're wanting to see? Should I move off a player? Should I be buying a performance? Or should I be selling something because, well, hey, he scored a lot of points, so that's great, right? Yeah, not always. So while on this Tuesday, I'm going to come out with a list of players that we should be aware of in our leagues. Maybe whether it's adding at the end of your bench because you think this guy has better upside than the guy you may have drafted. And I understand I just went against what I just said. I'm not saying draft or add these guys on waiver wire now. We should be looking at these guys, whether we're adding them as a waiver wire or if somebody else has them, that if everything hits, we could swoop in as a trade target early on before they really go off. So Here are the guys that early on, if I'm looking at my waiver wire, I want to keep my eye on as we enter into week 1. I want to look at situation. I want to look at what the team does with these players. So I'll give a quarterback. I will give 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers that I like, and a tight end. Now, for quarterback, I'm not going to do any sort of single league quarterback speculative ads because quarterback is very deep. If you don't know who to play on this week and you draft in your single league quarterback league, well, you may not go very far. So go figure that out. But for those that are playing in Superflex, for those that play in 2 quarterback leagues, here is somebody I'm looking at for potential depth. I don't want to start this guy this time. I didn't draft him. He's also on my waiver wire for a reason. But this is a guy that I would look at adding or seeing what happens in week 1 to see, can I add some depth with this guy that's kind of a sneaky, under the radar, and really, honestly, not very liked person for fantasy football. For this quarterback, I'm looking at Seattle's Geno Smith. Now, Smith beat out Drew Lock this offseason for the starting job in Seattle. And honestly, yes, he's going to be battling Lock for that position all year. So he is playing for his job right now. He will be playing for his job all year. Now, one of the reasons I like Smith this year, or looking at him this week to see what we've got, is we are still drafting DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett from Seattle. Now, they are not being drafted as high as they were when Russell Wilson was a quarterback in Seattle, and I understand that. However, DK Metcalf is still going as a wide receiver 2 in most leagues, and in Tyler Lockett's case, he's at least a wide receiver 2, if not 3. I mean, sometimes you can get him as your wide receiver 4, so they have definitely dropped. But if we are right and not drafting Geno Smith this year, and that he will not be good for fantasy football, he will not be good for real football, you can argue that that's not the same. You can be good for fantasy football and not good for real football. Go see Jameis Winston his last year for Tampa Bay. 30 interceptions, 30 touchdowns. Fantastic fantasy football quarterback. Not great real life quarterback. The two don't have to correlate. Okay, let's remember that. But if we are right in not drafting Geno because he will not be good at fantasy football, then we are wrong in drafting DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Because if Geno Smith is bad for fantasy football, that will mean he will make DK Metcalf bad for fantasy football, and Tyler Lockett will be bad for fantasy football. Let's remember that. Too often we forget that, where we'll draft a wide receiver from teams and not draft the quarterback because, well, the quarterback's not going to do anything. But this wide receiver will, but the quarterback won't. One position is determined on another. But I understand that the core wide receivers has taken a setback with having Geno Smith, not Russell Wilson. So that's already baked into their prediction, how we value them already. That's already gone in there. But let's explore last year in the 4 games that Geno Smith had when he played while Russell Wilson was out. He had over 700 yards and 5 touchdowns. Now, I'm not going to extrapolate that into what he would have had as a starter if he had started all 16 games. I don't believe that you can actually do that. Not well, anyway. I can't take 4 games and say, well, let's extrapolate out 17 games or 16, however many we have, and say, well, if it was average this, it's going to be this. NFL doesn't work on averages. So I'm not going to say this is what it would have been. But for a late waiver desperation ad, for a piece to add depth to your roster that really nobody wants, Geno Smith is owned in 1% of ESPN leagues right now. 1%. If you're that 1% of league that he is owned in, yeah, this ain't for you. But, I mean, you're probably playing in a 16, 18, 20 team, like really, really deep roster, right, configuration right now. So, yeah, these aren't for you. But for standard typical leagues, for Superflex, 12, 10, 14 even, potentially team leagues, yeah, Geno Smith is out there for your league. You can add him. If you only drafted 2 quarterbacks, he's there for you. Now, if guys like Jameis Winston, Daniel Jones, Jared Goff, those type of guys are available on your waiver, which if they are, you're playing in the wrong leagues. They're not competitive enough. But if they're available, I want those guys over Smith. But if you're in a bind, Geno Smith is going to be a serviceable dart throw. Look out for it. Be ready for it. It's going to look ugly. You're going to kind of turn your nose up at it and like, I can't believe I'm doing that. Why would I want to do that? But it can work. If you're in a bind, Geno Smith is going to be a good waiver to add. All right, let's move on to running backs. 2 running backs that I have that I'll be looking at waivers this week. First one's Kenyon Drake. And I know Drake just got cut by the Raiders, and he was picked up by the Ravens this recently. The Ravens are still dealing with injuries on the running backs this year. Gus Edwards hasn't practiced. He's on the PUP. He's not ready to play, and he's not going to be ready to play for a while. Okay? J.K. Dobbins is up in the air. We're not going to know if he's going to play until it gets closer to Sunday. But even if he is, does he get a high workload? Right now, you can't bank on that. And if you're banking on that as a Dobbins owner, I mean, you're kind of playing with fire, which, I mean, that's up to you if you want to play with. So, but this week, for week 1, I think Mike Davis, who is already on the Ravens, will get more carries than Kenyon Drake. Since Kenyon Drake was just added up to the team, Mike Davis is going to get a little bit more for the short term this week. But this is an ad to get a serviceable running back too. Since Edwards is still recovering from his injuries, this is a play that says Drake is going to get the second running back use behind Dobbins after week 1, week 2. It's going to be the Dobbins than Drake. Drake is a great pass catcher. He showed that in Las Vegas last year. He can go catch the ball, and he could run it too. It's kind of one of those bets against Gus Edwards. Okay, Drake currently is rostered only on 5% of ESPN leagues. He could see a lot of usage, and if he sees the amount of usage that Baltimore likes to run with, that percentage is going to go up quickly. He's not going to be available, so you got to be ready to go get this guy. Second guy, and these guys are not very sexy picks. They're not the cream of the crop by any means, and I don't mean to think that they are. But I'm looking at the very deepest of what could I add that's out there that nobody else is really looking at. Second one's Boston Scott. Okay. Philadelphia's backfield is very bad as far as I don't know what to do with it. I would rather not draft anybody from Philadelphia's running back room if I have the choice. But Boston Scott, you can go add him on waivers. Guess what? If it doesn't work out, turn it around. It's fine. You can drop him just as quickly. Okay. Here's why I would say Boston Scott. Philadelphia does not have any love for Miles Sanders. This backfield, like I said, is a mess. But if you went 0 RB during this draft and, you need to find a better play for an RB2 or even a flex, let's say you need to put a flyer on it, Boston Scott can't provide that upside. Last year when Scott was splitting with Gainwell and Howard, he performed well while splitting with that backfield. He was one of the lead backs. They didn't want to get rid of him. Scott's owned in only 3% of ESPN leagues. So the running backs that are here, like I said, they're a deeper play. But if they have a really good one outing, especially if Boston Scott does, he won't be available. Somebody else is going to pick him up because they're going to see, Boston Scott might emerge out of the backfield. Who cares about Miles Sanders or Kenny Gainwell? So those are my 2 running backs that I would say be on the lookout for through this week 1. Okay, I have 3 wide receiver names I like to point out here for as we're looking at week 1. What's kind of the speculation we would potentially want to add? First one is Zay Jones with Jacksonville. Yes, I know. Jacksonville added Christian Kirk. They paid him a lot of money this year. But if you look at what Zay Jones did down the stretch with Vegas, he was a very productive wide receiver fill-in. He could have been that wide receiver 2 for you that you needed to fill in. Zay Jones is the upside play at the end of your draft or week 1 waiver wire ad. You want to see what he can do? Zay Jones is the guy to go look at. Jaguars sent Laviska Shenault to Carolina. So now it's Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, and Marvin Jones. Okay? Zay Jones could easily outperform Marvin Jones Jr. this year. Zay Jones is only rostered in 1% of ESPN leagues. But if he works out a slot most of the time, so especially if you're playing a PPR league, if Zay Jones sees a 7 to 8 targets a game, what could he do with those games? What's his upside? What's his ceiling? Could he go 6 for 70 yards and maybe a touchdown? Is that worth a flex for you? Do you have a guy on your bench that you're like, do I see that sort of upside with that Zay Jones could provide? And I think it's a pretty good upside play right there. The second one's a more well-known name, but it's also a very controversial name. The second one's Paris Campbell. Okay. This, like I said, is a higher wide receiver name than what I said was Zay Jones. But if Campbell splashes in week 1, he's not going to be on the waiver wire for very long. He probably won't even be on there till week 2. Okay. I get it. He could get injured, and you know what? Why'd I add him? I added a guy that got injured. I've been on the Paris Campbell train before, though, and I love this guy. He has the physical traits that are special, okay? Indianapolis does not have a clear-cut wide receiver 2 this year. There's a battle for it, and throughout training camp, it was Campbell that was getting that. Not the rookie. It was Campbell, okay? The rookie, Alec Pierce, is not as talented as Campbell is, okay? Alec Pierce is at best, probably not even though, at best going to be the wide receiver 3 for this team. I even think Alec Pierce gets beat out by teammate Ashton Dulin, though. So you want a flyer that a lot of your league mates are going to turn their nose up because, well, this guy's going to get injured. Those are also the same teammates, by the way, that took Christian McCaffrey in the first round. And, oh, by the way, he's also injury prone. Just saying. So if you're going to say one player is, oh, that guy's going to get injured, I can't draft him, don't say that about another player. Just be consistent. Campbell is a dynamic receiver that will run out of slot, and what else can he do for the Colts with Matt Ryan now as a quarterback? Paris Campbell's only rostered in 2% of ESPN leagues. That's too low. You need to go out and get him right now. You need to have that guy be your upside play, okay? If you want this guy, you got to move faster than your league mates, though. Because if he splashes in week 1, he won't be there in week 2. Third wide receiver that is slightly more owned than the previous 2. This wide receiver has had a lot of talk this offseason because the team has had a lot of talk about how they're going to be different than what they were last year. New head coach, passing, loves to pass, wants dynamic playmaking. He's rostered in 6% of ESPN leagues. This player is KJ Osborne. Again, like I said, new head coach. Minnesota is no longer going to be that slow run-first offseason. Osborne has a chance to prove his ability. Now, he is not better, and I'm not saying he's going to be better than Justin Jefferson. Please don't. I'm not saying that. This isn't our bull takes episode. Anyway, that's not a bull take. That's a death take right there is what that is. But KJ Osborne could be better than teammate Adam Thielen. Now, if Thielen were to go down with injury, Osborne's role is going to skyrocket. He's going to be the number 2 de facto in that offense. I sincerely hope Thielen does not get injured. I love Adam Thielen. I think he's been a great story. He's one of the true great stories of the NFL as far as undrafted, and look at how productive he's been. I really hope he doesn't get hurt. But at the end of your draft again, or on the waiver wire, I'll take the dart throw to Osborne rather than drafting Thielen at that price. So we could be seeing an offense that is LA Rams North with viability of 3 wide receiver productions. But again, this is only speculative waiver wire ads that we're doing. That's all we need. What's speculation here? Why not take the guy with some of those upside at the end of your drafts that you can plug into a flex or a wide receiver 3 on week in, week out? That's all we're looking for. I have one tight end, and this tight end is not near as scarce as what every other position that I've put at as. But if you know my view on tight ends, I think tight end position in fantasy football should just be that of it's mixed in. It's a flex. It's mixed in with the pass catchers. You should have wide receivers and flex that the flex is a tight end, or you should have all flex where it's just pass catchers and running backs. That's all it is. But most leagues don't operate that way. So I reserve my right to be disgruntled about that. But for this tight end, he is rostered in 46% of ESPN leagues, so less than half. So about half the leagues that listen, he won't be there. Somebody already got him. But the other half, he's already there. This tight end is David Njoku. Okay, he will be the clear number 2 for Cleveland. He's also going to be the big guy in red zone that can see double-digit touchdown play. Okay, he's the guy that Cleveland signed to stay. He has a side and speed ability to be able to go get the ball, go down the seam, run the routes that they want to, be the safety valve for Jacoby Brissett while they're waiting for Watson, and just feast. You want a waiver, you want a speculative ad for tight end, Njoku is going to be the guy. There are other people out there that could do it too, but I like Njoku here at this position. So if you found this helpful, reach out to us, vampireleaguesff@gmail.com. Let us know your thoughts. Drop a comment on YouTube as well. Each Tuesday this football season, we'll come out with our waiver wire pickups for leagues as we have the previous week's games are done, and we wait for waivers to run Tuesday nights. So we'll come out with our waiver wire pickups. As we understand what is going on in the league, we'll have better information to give you with each waiver wire pickup. Stay tuned for Friday. We'll preview each games. I'll give my players where I see them higher or lower than what the consensus rank has for them. And so maybe we can get some value plays there. Or maybe we could avoid some landmines of big names that we might be hoping for big weeks for, that we should be prepared for. But just remember as we're done with this, as your fantasy team is absolutely unique, just like everybody else's. Just remember that. And thanks for tuning in. And don't forget to hit that like and follow, and we'll see you next time.